Imagine opening your eyes tomorrow morning. No alarm, no emails, no boss waiting for you, no deadlines. You wake up simply because your body decided it was time. And the only thought in your mind is, what do I feel like doing today? Sounds impossible, right? But for nearly 300,000 years of human history, that wasn't a fantasy. That was just Tuesday. The idea of a job, clocking in, answering to a boss, working 40 hours a week, is one of the newest inventions in human history. If you compressed all 300,000 years of human existence into a single day, the concept of jobs would only show up in the last few minutes before midnight. So here's the question that should bother you. If there were no jobs, what were people actually doing all day? Constantly hunting? Constantly starving? Fighting for survival every waking hour? Or have we been completely lied to by the movies? Stick around because the real answer, pulled from ancient skeletons, stone tools, cave painting, and the last surviving hunter-gatherer tribes on Earth, is stranger and more comforting than anything Hollywood ever showed you. Let's go back. Not hundreds of years, not thousands, tens of thousands. The sun rises over an open landscape. No roads, no buildings, just forests, rivers, grassland, and a small group of humans waking up beside a glowing fire. Children are already laughing. Someone tosses another branch on the flames. Nobody checks the time because nothing here is telling them they're late. The day starts with one simple question. What does our group actually need today? Maybe meat, maybe berries, maybe firewood, or maybe, and this is the part that breaks most people's brains, nothing at all. If enough food was gathered yesterday, there was simply no reason to work today. That's the first big myth we need to kill. Movies love to show cavemen running for their lives every 5 minutes. Starving, fighting, barely surviving. But when anthropologists actually studied modern hunter-gatherer tribes still living this way, they found something nobody expected. Many groups spent only a small fraction of the week finding food. The rest of the time was spent living, talking, teaching kids, making tools, making art, playing, resting. This doesn't mean life was easy. Danger was real, and food wasn't guaranteed. But in many environments, nature simply provided enough that survival didn't demand constant labor. And once survival was handled, humans did something no other animal on Earth has ever done. They started making things just because they were beautiful, things that have now survived tens of thousands of years. Back at camp, the morning doesn't begin with stress. It begins with conversation. Someone shares leftover roasted meat. Someone else passes around berries and roots. Nobody's eating at their desk. The whole group eats together, laughing, trading stories, slowly figuring out the day. And notice something important here. Nobody in this group has a job title. Nobody says, I'm the hunter forever. That's my role. People helped wherever they were needed that day. Hunting one morning, fixing tools the next, teaching kids the one after that. Not a work schedule, just necessity. A small group heads out, some with spears, some with woven baskets for fruit, nuts, and roots. And here's where Hollywood lies to you again. Hunting usually wasn't a dramatic fight scene. It was mostly patience, following footprints, reading broken branches and animal tracks most of us couldn't even see. Hours of walking, sometimes coming back with nothing. And that was completely normal, because nobody expected a kill every single day. When someone did succeed, the meat was shared across the whole group. No paycheck. No, this is mine. Get your own. Cooperation wasn't a nice idea. It was the actual survival strategy. Meanwhile, the gatherers were often bringing in the bigger share of the group's calories, wild fruit, mushrooms, honey, roots, medicinal plants. Nature was their supermarket, but it was a supermarket where one wrong choice, the wrong berry, the wrong leaf could kill you. Which is exactly why the elders, the ones who'd memorized which plants were safe, weren't just old people. They were the group's survival manual, and everyone knew it. By midday, most of the essential work was already done. If there was meat, nothing was wasted. The skin became clothing, the bones became needles and fishhooks. Even the tendons became thread, not because anyone was being eco-conscious, because every single resource mattered. And then something happens that might be the most surprising part of this entire story. The day doesn't get busier after that. It gets quieter, because now, the real freedom of the day begins. If this were your life today, this is the point where you'd open a laptop and start answering emails. But these humans had something most of us barely experience anymore: actual free time. And they didn't waste it scrolling. Some sat together making better tools, a sharper knife, a stronger basket, not because a boss told them to, but because it made life easier for everyone. Others repaired hides into clothing, or twisted plant fibers into rope. Every object was handmade. Every skill took years to master, and being good at something earned you real respect in the group. But it didn't stop at useful. Deep inside caves, archaeologists later found paintings of galloping horses, massive bison, powerful lions, made with natural pigment by torchlight, taking hours of planning and steady hands. Nobody paints a bison because they're hungry. They paint it because somewhere in us, we've always wanted to make something that outlives us. Necklaces carved from shells, beads made from animal teeth, and this one still gives me chills. Some of the oldest musical instruments ever found were flutes carved from hollow bird bone. Picture that for a second. Someone sitting by a fire, patiently drilling tiny holes into a bone. Not to hunt, not to fight, just to make music. Creativity wasn't invented by civilization. It's tens of thousands of years older than cities, older than money, older than writing. There were no classrooms either. Kids learned by watching, following hunters, copying how tools were made, memorizing which plants were safe, slowly becoming experts just by paying attention. Knowledge didn't live in books. It lived in people, which is exactly why losing one elder meant losing decades of irreplaceable survival knowledge, and why wisdom, not muscle, was often what earned the most respect. Without banks, governments, or written law, trust was the currency that actually mattered. People raised each other's kids, settled arguments face to face. Someone who constantly refused to help others could end up alone. And out here, alone usually meant dead. Cooperation wasn't kindness. It was the whole strategy. As the sun goes down, the entire camp gathers around the fire. And this, for most of them, is the best part of the day. No TV, no phones, no electricity. Just the fire and voices. An old hunter tells the story of a dangerous animal he once tracked for 2 days. Someone explains which plant actually heals a wound. Someone tells a joke that makes the whole camp lose it. A kid asks about the strange lights in the sky, and someone tries their best to answer. This wasn't just entertainment. This was the internet, the school, and the library all rolled into one fire. Every story carried a lesson, and every lesson passed down to the next generation this way. Long before books, stories were humanity's archive. This is where culture was born. Some researchers even believe sleep itself looked different before artificial light split into 2 chunks through the night, with people waking in the dark hours to talk quietly, watch the stars, and drift back off. Their whole life ran on nature's clock, not a device screaming at 6 a.m. For thousands and thousands of years, this barely changed. Then, about 10,000 years ago, a blink in human terms, everything did. Instead of following wild plants, people started planting them. Instead of hunting animals, they started keeping them. Agriculture had arrived, and at first it looked like pure upgrade, more food, bigger communities, more children surviving. But it came with a bill nobody saw coming. Fields can't be abandoned. Crops need daily attention. Animals need guarding. Stored food needs defending. Work that used to be occasional, a hunt here, a gathering trip there, became daily, permanent, non-negotiable. As villages grew into towns and towns into civilizations, people stopped working for themselves and started working for someone else. A kingdom, a temple, a merchant, an employer. And slowly, quietly, time itself became something you could sell. That sentence is basically the origin story of your Monday morning. Now, a quick, honest note before we wrap up. Not every researcher agrees on exactly how relaxed prehistoric life really was. This picture is drawn largely from 20th century studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies, like anthropologist Marshall Sahlins' influential work on groups such as the Kong. And some scholars argue it romanticizes a past that also had real hardship, hunger, and danger. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Not an endless struggle, but not a permanent vacation either. Still, the core fact holds. For almost all of human history, nobody clocked in. Today, we wake up because a screen tells us to. We eat because the clock says it's noon. We rest only after the work is done, if there's anything left of us by then. But for nearly all of human history, people measured a good life differently. Strong friendships, useful skills, shared meals, healthy kids, stories worth remembering. Modern life gave us medicine, comfort, and decades of extra lifespan we should never take for granted. That trade was real and mostly worth it. But somewhere in that trade, we also gave up something we don't talk about enough: time. The freedom to let a day simply unfold. Maybe that's exactly why so many of us daydream about a cabin in the woods, or a long break from work we can't quite afford to take. Maybe some small, ancient part of the brain still remembers the rhythm that shaped humans for 300,000 years, long before anyone clocked in for a single shift. Jobs built civilization. Nobody's arguing that. But long before civilization, humans had already figured out something a lot of us are still chasing: a life with purpose, connection, creativity, and enough time left over to just be human. If this changed how you see a normal Tuesday, hit subscribe, because history's still hiding a few thousand more stories like this one.